Hi everyone. In this video, I would like to discuss with you one of the research papers. It's very important. Writing a specific article, a step-by-step guide for beginners. Because number of research scholars, they were asking me, ma'am, how we have to write a research paper, how we have to write a scientific article. And this paper is already published in elsewhere. European, this one is the Madison 2015 it was published, and this paper it has been clearly defined in this abstract. Many young researchers find it extremely difficult to write scientific articles, and few receive specific training in the art of presenting their research work in written format. So how some people are very good in the analysis, but they could not be able to write in a effective manner, writing their research papers. So what we have to do, there is a specific guidelines specific. It's a very good paper where you can define how we have to write a research paper. So first of all, if I will talk about background of this big background of this particular research paper is subjectivity that goes hand in hand with deep involvement can make it difficult to take a step back and think clearly about how best to present the research in a clear and understandable fashion, so that others likely not experts in your field can also appreciate the interest of your findings. And this paper is divided into number of sections. Number one is background, the next one is the getting started things to be before you write a word. So a certain amount of preparatory work need to be done before you ever write a word of your article. This background work should generally already have been accomplished by the time you are at the writing stage. So it also serves as background to the research project you are writing about. And when we come to this part, most important thing before starting to write, you should identify the target journal in which you intend to submit your research. Why? Because this will have consequences for the formatting, but more importantly, for the orientation of your research style, since the writing must be appropriate for the type of readers you are targeting. So here is the choice of the target journal depends on a range of factors, because it depends on the number of the factors which are beyond the scope of this article. And your paper falls within the scope of the journal you have chosen. Then the section 3, it is defining here, majority of these scientific journals follow the so-called IMRAD format. What is actually this IMRAD format? I stands for introduction, M stands for methods, and here is R stands for result, and here is result and analysis, and D stands for discussion. So naturally, there are some exceptions to this rule, and you should always check the instructions for authors of the journal where you plan to submit your paper. So when we talk about an introduction, a method section, a result section, and a discussion, abstract, which is more or less summary of these main sections, and of course, the title. So list of bibliographic references and tables and the legends to any figures. Finally, there may also be some other optional sections such as acknowledgement, conflicts of interest, or author's contribution. So here is when we talk about this one is the section number 3 and introduction section. Here is now we are going to start. First section is introduction. So introduction is of prime importance in grabbing the reader's attention, and because first reader would be our reviewers. Like we always remember who to whom we are writing our research paper, And that is answer is, of course, that is for readers. So who is our first reader? Our first reader would be our reviewers. So introduction must get the reviewer hooked, wanting to read more and thinking to themselves, how come I never thought of this? They should also feel this kind of thought. In this section, you will thus explain why you undertook your study and what you aim to achieve with it, and how this constitutes a useful addition to the existing body of evidences on this topic. And any previous and possibly conflicting data, that's important because it would rationally and logically will justify why you had written this research paper, will logically lead to a description of an explicit gap in the knowledge that your study hopes to fill. And it would be it explain how your study is going to continue something new and useful. You should clearly state your working hypothesis, followed by your objectives, and very briefly the strategy implemented to achieve these goals. Then we come to the here is you should keep in mind the target audience you are aiming for. Whatever is your piece of research, to whom you are targeting, to whom you are addressing. The introduction should logically flow towards the identification of the gap in knowledge that you hope to fill, and this is your opportunity to state the added value of your study. And here is this is the table, and beautifully expressed in this table outline of the main features of the introduction section with examples. Number one is background describing what is known on the subject, right? So for example of this particular heading, here is here is we are talking about that is maybe associated with the procedure related to related complications, and what is not known, what elements are still subject to controversy, what is the exact gap in the knowledge that your study hopes to fill, cite your existing data, especially conflicting data that indicate uncertainty. And objective plus minus here is working hypothesis, cite for exact parameter you plan to measure, cite the type of patient population or clinical context right in this research that is relevant to the research, and cite any secondary objectives. So that all these criteria should be according to your paper writing should be fulfilled in your introduction part. Then we come to the here is we can see here in this introduction section. After that, you can see here, do not be afraid of appearing repetitive. Repetition is not necessarily a bad thing in an article. It shows the reader at least that you know what you are talking about, and using the same terms throughout avoid any confusion. Right? So you are going to write repetitive statements also. And here is when we talk about, we can say quality of your written English. Many large institutions have translators or specific writers who may be able to translate or correct your text if you are facing any issue to write an article. So, for those who are not lucky enough to have such resources at their disposal, you should look to important publications in good quality journals for examples. And when we come to this section, you can see here, there is one more table that is related to your, once again, that would be related to your introduction section. These are the aim, tense, and example has been given with example, they have described and what tense you are going to use. So to describe the current state of knowledge, that should be in the present tense, like cancer is a common disease. This is an example. or to describe observations previously published by others. That should be past tense, imperfect past tense. And here is like, for example, Smith et al. Showed the drug A reduced the rate of death, whereas drug B did not. Third kind of they had expressed to describe a process that began at some unspecified time in the past and is not yet complete. So that would be present perfect tense. And several researchers have investigated the effect of drug A on this disease. Then one more example is to describe something that has not happened yet, means present perfect tense. So it has not yet been determined whether. To formulate your hypothesis, always it should be in past tense for the first verb and present tense for second verb. It has not yet been determined whether, like for example, we hypothesize that drug A increases the risk of bleeding. To formulate your objective, that always it will be in the past tense and we aim to measure. So that is the all about your this introduction section. And here is the sample size justification can be included here, stating the working hypothesis for the frequency of the outcome and its variance, the difference you expect to observe, right? We are talking about in this section, you can see here, this is the section, this is the part of the method section, right? In the method section, we could be able to write our sample size justification, and that would be the frequency of the outcome and its variance, the difference you expect to observe, and the alpha and beta risk used for your calculation, right? Like type 1 and type 2 errors, the level of significance for the analysis as well as the software used should be also be included. It must be remembered that planned subgroup analysis have an impact on the calculation of the sample size, and the use of multiple analysis may require, right, Von Ferrani's correction to ensure that the alpha risk is not inflated. Then we come to the methods should mainly be described using the past and perfect tense, as I said earlier also. That is, we performed, we recorded, we measured, we tested. The past perfect tense should be used to describe events occurring before your study, right? And when we come to the result section, it is a good practice to present the result in the same order as the methods. Then detail the results observed referring to the relevant tables or figures. Example, the number of lessons was significantly higher in group A compared to group B. When we come to the this part discussion section, and it's very important here is, before that I would like to tell you the major question for many researchers when writing the results section, whether to describe the results in the text or use a table or figure. So tables should be used for data such as baseline characteristics, outcomes, treatments, and where the same variables are being described for two or more groups. You can use to present this data in a tabular form. And relationship and trends are here is amenable to graphical presentation in figures. There may be a limit to the total number of illustrations, figures, and tables. When we come to the discussion part, the discussion is where you interpret and explain the significance of your result and how they fit into the wider picture of what has already been observed and reported. And discussion actually with a brief recap of the main findings of his study, preferably using the same formulation as that used for the primary objective in the introduction and the primary endpoint in the methods. Pay attention when interpreting not to simply repeat the results, or at the other end of the scale, not to over interpret. And if you state in your result that after administration of drug X, 20 out of 25 patients experienced here is that is the then it is not accurate to indicate in the discussion that 80% of patients who receive drug X have, right, here is incarnation hemorrhage, and this is the interpretation that believe the original idea. Then we come to the this is the table 3 that is exactly related to your perspective studies, right? This is related to your methods and retrospective study and prospective study. Subjects, inclusion and non-inclusion criteria, each and everything has given here. Primary endpoint, secondary endpoint, statistical analysis, each and everything. But prospective study registration if randomized, and sample size calculation, randomization procedure, each and everything should be explained over here, right? And after that, then we come to the this part. You have to report here what are the novel findings of your study. Yield new evidences or a new contribution to the state of knowledge will substantiate the importance of your paper and its add value to the literature as opposed to being. And do not be afraid to write an article reporting negative results. Well conducted study that does not yield positive result is always a useful contribution to the current body of evidence. And in practical terms, you may indicate how your results are likely to influence practice or the state of knowledge. For example, will your result, here is the general opinion one way or the other. So here is reviewers to see that you are aware of your own shortcomings, and secondly, it provides an opportunity for you to defend yourself on these points and state why the supposed imitation not be so negative after all. And last is you are going to write abstract, and the abstract is short summary of the article in a few sections, usually background, method, result, conclusion. It is used for referencing purpose in online bibliographic database such as PubMed. And here is you can see main points that you are going to cover up in abstract. Background number 1, then after that methods, then results, then conclusion, then references, then discussion, then figures. Here is after this this paper is focusing on the last part of the title. So title should be very catchy, because whenever the researchers they are trying to find out whatever is the previous research, so if keywords are in your title, that would be reflected in the search, otherwise it will not. And citation also can be improved when you had used keywords in your title. So here is when we talk about other people's search result, with the result that your paper will never be cited by others since they did not find it or read it. Once your title is identified and listed among dozens, if not hundreds of other papers on the same topic. So I'm sure you understand how you have to write your title. And bear in mind that your target journal may have a limit in terms of number of words or characters on the length of the title. So here again, keeping it short is harder than coming up with a 4-line title. Then the last is references. References, it depends on the journal criteria, whether they are asking in APA format, or they are asking for Vancouver, or they are asking for Harvard. It depends on a journal requirement. So this one is accordingly you have to, because the number of these softwares are available in the on the internet, right? Like Mandalay, you can use Mandalay, you can use EndNote, through which you can organize your references, right? So here is citing. This one is the complete body of the paper. First is here is you can see title, and second one is the next one is the most attractive thing is abstract, then introduction, then methods, then results, then discussion, and last is references. So here is, as regard the formatting, the style in which the references should be presented will vary according to your, as I said, as per your target journal for submission. and follow the journal's instruction for authors on this point, at the risk of having your paper rejected if you do not follow the style guidelines. So that's all, and it is a very good paper. Those are and in the beginning stage, right? Those have just entered, and as well as that paper would be helpful to the research scholars. So I'm sure it will contribute in your research. Thank you. Keep watching.